Hey!
Hello, everyone. Hi, Amelia.
Hi, Tatan. Hi, everybody. How are you?
Well, good morning to you and good evening to me. So happy that we're able to, bridge time zones, even though there's a 12-hour difference between Mexico and the Philippines. But we're here. We're back after some time. And yeah, so what have you been doing lately?
uh, I don't know. How are you?
Energy, energy.
So many things. We even had a gathering with many feminists to talk about the many, many meetings we've been at. We were in Ayafi in South Africa, Women Deliver in Rwanda, and there were many meetings happening at the same time. Rina was at this meeting on the trade and gender group,
Mm.
and I think everybody has been all over the place. Like, so we have many things to catch up with.
Yes. So I think we should be able to share with some of our friends what we've been busy with lately. And maybe they've also been to those meetings, or even if they haven't, they would want to know what happened, what are the main outcomes, what were
Yeah.
the fun moments, what were the gossips at those meetings.
Oh, I have
And
so
then, of
many. I
course,
have one that is very good.
okay, so looking back and then looking ahead. So maybe you can start with the look back, and then I can jump in for the looking ahead. And you also I know you're cooking up something, and yeah, we'll tell
Yeah.
everyone about it later.
But what have you been doing also during this time?
Well, I've been to some meetings on climate finance, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting because for COP28, the next big meeting on climate in Dubai, there's supposed to be some proposals already for how to operationalize this loss and damage fund that we won at COP27. So this whole year has been dedicated to trying to, you know, um, imagine what this new loss and damage fund would look like, what its modalities, its governance structure, and more importantly, how it will be financed, who's gonna pay, and who has to receive the money. So all of these discussions will supposedly come to a conclusion at COP28. And yeah, last month I was in many of those meetings, and I think a week from now there will be the big meeting in Dominican Republic to finally get parties or governments to draft text and language. And
Oh,
yep, so that's a really crucial meeting. But at the same time, it's quite worrisome because at this very crucial meeting, the UN is saying that they are actively discouraging non party observers, meaning us, civil society, NGOs. So they're saying, oh, it's very far. Most sessions will be closed to non party observers, so even if you're there in person physically, there is no guarantee that you'll be able to enter the room and actively participate in the negotiations.
that's
They've
so
done that
bad.
yeah, they've done that before in previous meetings, but at least before there was an overflow room, the room where you can just see the negotiations happening in the big screen. And there were some moments where civil society can make inputs, make interventions. But for this particular meeting, they're saying that some sessions will be closed, not even accessible for those who are coming all the way to Dominican Republic, not even accessible for those watching via webcast. So there's no way for us to know what kind of wheeling and dealing is happening in those rooms at this very crucial moment. Yep,
That's so bad because everybody has their eyes focused on this fund. This is one of the most important things in the new climate financial architecture.
indeed. And we've been drafting together with other constituencies, like the climate justice, the environment NGOs, the women and gender constituency, will be submitting a letter to the members of
Yeah.
this committee and also to the secretariat, questioning and denouncing,
Yeah.
this lack of transparency, this lack of accountability. And
Yeah.
we're telling them at this crucial juncture, you're saying that you want the participation of affected communities, in this new financing architecture, but you're not letting them into the room. You're not letting them speak. So, um, it totally is going to be challenged in terms of legitimacy. Whatever decision that will come out from Dominican Republic, I think a
Yes.
lot of people will, raise serious questions and concerns around it.
That sounds so bad. I just can't. Um, but I hope there has to be also some public pressure, no? Like not only internally, but also on social media, so that
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
knows.
Mm-hmm. I think people will be starting to turn up the heat, no, so that there could be some changes, if ever. Actually, yesterday we were on a call with some of the representatives from the United Arab Emirates, because they will be the COP28 presidents, no? And we raised this concern, and then he said, the time for hearing inputs from observers has passed. We now want the parties to sit together, sit down, and start drafting text and language. So it's like, okay. So, but this was a commitment that they've made, that the process will be inclusive, transparent. But now, when it comes down to the crunch moments, crunch time, civil society has the door locked. No, we're not even kicked out of the room. The doors are just locked. It's shut. We cannot enter. So that's about it for the climate finance discussions and
So not
negotiations.
only one representative of each constituency will be able to enter the session.
Well, there are two representatives each from the constituencies to be able to come to the hotel where the meeting is going. If they're lucky, they get to go to the overflow room. If they're lucky, some sessions are, accessible to them. But as it stands, some sessions will totally be closed to any observer, to any webcasting, etc.
That's so bad. But I
Yes.
also have another question for you because
Mm,
you attended the meeting on Article 21C. B
2.1C. Yeah.
C. Yes.
We're starting with the geek talk.
Tell the audience what
Yeah.
are we talking about. I think we mentioned it briefly when we were in June in Bond, but this is very important.
Yes. But discussion around Article 2.1C for the non climate geeks is about making sure that all finance flows should be consistent with a low carbon pathway. Yeah, so it sounds good because at least, no, we want to make sure that it's not going to be harmful for the environment. However, there's a big catch. They're making climate finance flows contingent to mitigation efforts. It's going to be focused totally on mitigation,
Oh.
when the need is adaptation and loss and damage. That's one. So a lot of the developing countries are saying this is a green conditionality. You're forgetting that there is
Mm.
an Article 9 in the Paris Agreement which says that developed countries should provide finance for mitigation and adaptation. But now the developed countries are pushing so hard that Article 2.1C is going to be on the agenda of COP28, meaning any discussion on climate finance is just towards a low carbon pathway. So it's a green conditionality, in the name of making sure that we are all mitigating and mitigating enough, even for those countries that have very low carbon footprints, the focus will be financing for mitigation. And without that, if developing countries do not agree to that, they won't get any finance. So it's gonna be messy at COP28.
That's horrible. I didn't know the unfoldings on this conversation. Hey, Rina!
Hi, Rita! So happy to see you. You made it.
I made it. I made it. I'm sorry I'm late, friends, my
It's
Despise
all right.
Girls, and everyone. What
How
am
It's
I
are
missing?
okay.
you?
What have I missed? Tetet is doing some recap on what, Tetet?
Yeah, I was in Bangkok last month for all of those climate finance meetings. So I was
Okay.
just telling Emilia that the future doesn't look so good because developed countries are already throwing their weight around and putting all of these conditionalities to finance, making it subject only to for mitigation financing, the low carbon pathways, when in fact our countries, our communities need financing for adaptation. Our people need financing for loss and damage. So
And
it's gonna be
and
super messy.
it's not just that the global south needs finance for adaptation and loss and damage. It's also that developed countries are making it seem as if the energy transition needs to happen in the south, and it needs to happen in the north. They are the ones with 92% excess emissions because
That's
they
true.
are the ones responsible for the climate emergency. So they are the ones who need to make the transition. It's not developing countries the ones that are to blame. And so they need climate finance should not only be conceived for the South in the sense that the only climate action needs to happen in the South. Climate action is to pour the actions in the South, while the North is taking the leadership and really doing a expedient reduction of their carbon emissions. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. It's just absurd. It's
But it's
absurd.
also very dangerous, Emilia, when you say that it's the North that has to, focus on transition because they're doing that, but at the expense of the South.
Yes.
All of their fixation for clean, renewable energy,
And
transition
mining the
minerals.
South. Yes,
Yeah,
I hate
it's
that.
really driving, land grabs, resource
Yeah.
grabs, displacement of
Displacement.
indigenous communities, all in the
Exactly.
name of getting this so-called transition minerals.
Yeah, but
So,
that's just want to say to our audience, that's precisely what we're not meant to say when we want to talk about a transition, because I want them to degrow. I want them to reduce their lifestyle, to stop, to reduce their level of consumption and overproduction. You know, that like we are meaning different things when we say it's the North, the ones who need to take the responsibility, and in the way they are conceiving it. It's just again another market and colonial and imperial appropriation. So no matter way they turn to, they're just horrible, greedy, and criminal. That's the thing that we need to denounce, especially people from the global north
mm,
need to denounce that is happening in behalf of their name. That's horrible.
Yeah, and that who's there in the meeting? Is there like anyone? Like, is it the government or the International Financial Institution? ADB, is ADB also there because they're so big right now on just energy transition that they are co-opted coming from our
mhm.
you know like coming from the language of just transition, right? Like who's there like that?
Yeah, it's a formal UN climate session, although it's not a negotiation, it's a workshop. So, at least the parties or the governments who are part of these climate negotiations were all there together with other agencies, the IMF, World Bank, ADB, and so on and so forth. They were all there. And it was really funny because, because it was a workshop type, my gosh, all of us were in breakout rooms for all of those days. But what
Yes.
I appreciated with the breakout format is that, I sit on the same table as the representative of the US government, the French government, so I can speak freely. And I did that because some of the negotiators from the developing countries, not from Africa, they couldn't say it because they're still diplomats at the end of the day. So they still have those nice protocols. So I told the facilitator, I'm going to use my prerogative as civil society. And did you know that the US and France has to contribute their fair share of loss and damage finance? Da 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 da. Da. So, and then I saw the African negotiator. He was winking at me. It's like, way to go,
Ah,
girl. So, I realized, that that is also one value that civil society has in all of these intergovernmental spaces. Things that southern governments cannot say because of diplomacy, because of all of those protocols. They are also counting on civil society to
yeah.
speak truth to power. So I said, "Oh, I love you."
Just to continue, before going to Rina to ask her what she's done, just to wrap up with this climate finance issue, there is going to be a meeting next week as well on the new collective quantifiable climate finance goal. No? And so that would be the wrap up of the climate finance meetings alongside this one you're mentioning in Dominican Republic before going to the COP. So this is totally related because on the one hand, this new climate finance goal should be tied to the Paris Agreement, Article 9 about finance, and saying that it is the commitment of developed countries to deliver, to fulfill their pledge um, of delivering the 100 billion for the Green Climate Fund every year, plus escalating the amount of funding they will deliver globally for climate action. And so far, things are not looking well precisely because of what Tete is saying, because they're trying to deviate the discussion, not fulfill their commitments in Article 9, meaning not fulfilling their commitments here in this global finance goal, and they're trying to shift the responsibility and the weight into this discussion on 21B C. C. My brain is not working today. But so this is really important that we keep track of. And the audience sounds like, as Tete was saying, very geeky, but this is the most important conversation that is happening in the climate finance arena. So we really need to stay abreast of it and be updated and push for the governments of the governors to deliver their commitments.
Yeah.
Rina, where have you
Yeah.
been? Tell us everything. What have you been
Well,
doing lately?
before I say where have I been, I also want to say that I'm excited that I'm going to the COP 28 with both of you. Yay! At
Finally.
least for now. At least for now. That's the plan, right? And then we're going to, yeah, paint the town red. Paint the COP 28 red in there.
Woohoo.
Okay, so where have I been? Where do you want me to start, Amelia and Tete? Like that's like okay, let me go back. I think that I haven't been to many of the advocacy or engagement in the regional and global level. A lot of things that I'm doing right now, and mostly we are doing, is try to consolidate civil society position, feminist position, people's movement position in lots of issues. So I'm just going to maybe have like few things, right? One is that I think in Johannesburg, we had like this meeting with the Feminists for Binding Treaty Alliances, which is like working on the issue of the binding treaty on the transnational cooperation, right? And then it was a good meeting. It was the first time ever again the Feminists for Binding Treaty Alliance met after like maybe 3 or 4 years after the COVID, right? So it's sort of like try to reconsolidate again our why we are doing this, and then why this is
Hmm.
important. We are talking about where we are right now, what is the status of the negotiation. There will be another like consultation that is going to happen in Geneva in October 2023, this October, coming October. So we are
Hmm.
kind of preparing ourselves on that, right? But we also felt that, look, this is not working, like there's no progress at all, right? There's a lot of like blocking from the rich countries, and then there's also the negotiation is not happening like what we wanted. There's so many new rules that is happening. They also introduce new mechanism. So that's why we are also thinking what we need to do actually outside of the negotiation, outside of giving inputs to the text. What are the things that we need to do? Because like for me myself, right, it is very difficult to just like engage in Geneva, which is
Yeah.
happening in Geneva. And then how do you, and without us having a proper kind of capacity building or movement building or organizing works in relation with this issue, right? And then we have so many stories, so many things that we can actually build if we want to have a
Mhm.
campaign around it, right? At the same time, after that, we also talk about, we have a meeting, a strategy meeting also on the Gender and Trade Coalition. And then this is also good. The coalition is actually a feminist coalition, and together with the women's rights movement that we compiled together that time after the 2017, WTO mentioning about the women economic empowerment, and then we are very, very strongly against it, right? So we are trying to like trying to come together again. So there are feminists coming from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America, the global South feminists, come together and then just really think about what is actually what we need to do the next. So I think that my thinking about this year is really after the COVID, yeah, after
Yeah.
COVID, and now we can travel. It's time for us to reconsolidate, and then it's not easy because I think that COVID has been really making us like weakening our
Yeah.
our 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 movements. We need to be honest with that. We don't have the time to actually able to come together and then strengthen and then strategizing together, put our heads together. So those meeting is very valuable that way. And then again, I think that they're always sort of like a conversation like, is UN really working? Like what is actually the process that we need to do to actually push for this issue? Are we going to, like for Gender and Trade Coalition, are we going to the WTO? Is it UNCTAD is the process that we want to pursue, right? Or is it something else, and then or is there anything that we can do other than engagement in that kind of processes, right? So
Mm.
my take is about how we build movement, how we, sharpening our analysis, which is I think that the most important, right? For now, when we are actually, revived from COVID, right? So that's I'm going to stop there. Is there any question or anything? Because I have a lot of other more. Yeah.
Um, no, thank you so much for this because I wish I could have been with you all because it sounds very relevant. It seems like these have been two of the most important feminist meetings globally this year, and you were in those two. So that's first of all, that's amazing, and I'm really glad that there's a reconfiguration and people is gathering up and meeting and doing strategy again, because we barely do that. We're only catching up and just chasing the meetings and trying to stay up to the document, etc. But taking a step back and strategize is so important, especially in those two processes in which you say, uh, yeah, we're losing the battles because it seems like things are very difficult. So it would be really important to keep on talking about these two issues and how the audience can also support the work of these two groups, no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like we are trying so hard, and then we also realizing, actually, Amelia and Teta and everyone, that like our work, that it is still important how we want to influence the language and all that, but we also realizing if that's the only thing that we do, then like for instance, like the one that is going to be in the discussion is only the organization or feminist organization who have the access and technical expertise on that issue, right? So it's also about how we bring others in, And then, we also need to know that not everyone probably, have the capacity in terms of time, right, and resources
And
to really
resources.
following the negotiations, right? It
Mm.
can be something else. And then so that's why how we build our forces, and then how we work together is more, yeah, is actually the thing that we want to do. So another thing, so many. Okay, another thing that yeah, we also organize two convenings in relation on debt crisis and women human rights.
Yes, I want to hear all about
Yes,
that.
yeah, yeah, that was amazing. I mean, like, I totally very inspired, and very angry, but also
In Sri
very
Lanka.
inspired.
That's the meeting in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka, where we did that in Sri Lanka. So this is just happened. I think, like, I just came back around 2 weeks ago, something like that. So first of all, we did a regional convening with not only with the Sri Lanka feminist groups, but also together with the other coming from different countries. So we have Pakistan, we have Mongolia, we have those coming from Philippines and Indonesia and Thailand. We discussed together about the issue of debt, right? And then we really look into how, the lending cycle itself, or the debt cycle itself, is very colonial and very imperialist. We try to unpack it. We try to look into the historical overview of debt, and then how that it come, and then also just to, share among each other our anger and frustration in relation
Mm.
with the issue, and then also the conditionalities, and then its impact, and then to women, and then also the austerity measure that is also been conditioned from the IMF and World Bank and all that, actors, so that is the main discussion. And then I was just really hearing the other women from Asia and the Pacific when they are, giving their, situation on the issue of debt crisis, especially in Pakistan. It's not only debt crisis; they're also dealing with inflation. They're dealing with climate crisis. They're dealing with the, of course, the militarism that is happening because of the geopolitical power wants to actually capture the territory. All of those stuff.
Mm.
It's, really the nexus between all of those, right? And then how it impacting women of the global south. So it's really eye opening. And then just on the colonial legacy, because I just want to let you know before that, in the country of Indonesia, for instance, our first debt is actually coming from the Dutch. So if you know that Indonesia is, we are have our independence, we claim our independence on 1945, 17th of August. And then only in 1949 that the Dutch recognize, you know, Indonesia as a independent, but as a condition for recognition, they asked
Mm.
us to actually pay for the Dutch debt, in terms of, yeah. So that's
Disgusting.
ridiculous, disgusting,
Disgusting.
And then again, we need to pay for that over and over again, and then with all of this extra debt after that, no. So that is what happened in the regional convening. We managed to sort of like build our strategy together, what we
Mm.
actually want to do, right? If of course we want debt cancellation, but we also want to say that we don't owe, so we won't pay, that kind of
Yes.
we don't owe, we won't pay, we are the creditors, that is the call
Yeah.
that we are going to have, right? And then we are really, strongly want to discuss ways for us, in different forms, either it is like going to the street, or either we are having like a lot of,
Mm.
political education, and all of those, and then also advocacy, as like what we do in the national, and then the regional and the global level. And then after that, we move on to the national convening on that crisis, which is also happening in Sri Lanka. And then this is really coming from the Sri Lanka members and partners and women's rights organization in Sri Lanka, they saying that, you know, a lot of feminist movement in Sri Lanka felt that they need to have a regional backing. And then, of course,
Mm,
this is again the
yeah.
call for everyone. I think that they don't only need a regional backing, they need all of the international solidarity,
Mm,
all the international backing about their issue, because they felt that, you know, when they're talking about the impact of the austerity measure, the impact of conditionality of IMF, they felt that they are alone because, you know, everybody else that is like experts, consultants, you know, that discussing on the issue of that crisis in Sri Lanka think that they are, you know, like crazy, you know, because they said no to the IMF, right? So
mm,
they want to have that space to come together and then to have a discussion. What is actually really the impact of these conditionalities, right? So what happened was one of the, what do you call it? We also bring together a lot of grassroots women that is have like a direct impact on the issue, you know, like many coming from the peasant women working in the fisher folk, you know, and all of those, and then we come together and we discuss, right? And then we also have, you know, we also have some of our regional participants also join there, and then we have a very good sharing and discussion. And then we ended with a press conference, which is amazing. It was actually attended by more than 30 press.
wow.
I know. It was amazing. I was like really felt inspired of the
Mm,
work. Yeah, because we really had a good media gathering, good media conference, and also received a good coverage. And then one of the guests that we invited is also Juan Pablo, which is the previous independent expert on foreign debt. And then he was also came to Sri Lanka before then, and then have a report about Sri Lanka and debt crisis. And then he also mentioned the same thing, that we cannot have an orthodox economic policies, you know, in the global south, developing countries, poor country that cannot even, you know, cannot even pay the debt. And then if they pay the debt, it's going to be of the expense of the all the social security
mm,
and the basic human rights needs of the people, right? And then what makes me angry actually in that national convening is that one of the trade union tell that once that they actually have that IMF and then the issue of debt crisis, uh, they actually have a labor law reform. And then one of their way to pay the debt, no, it's not from taxing the rich, it's not from, you know, having a corporate taxation that is higher. No, the one that they do is actually they take it from the evident providence fund. Do you know what evidence providence fund is? You know, it's like a pension fund, you know, when you actually a worker, yeah, they will stay in that place, and then they will allocate it, some savings, some money, right? That cannot be taken unless they go out of the work. So they took it from that, the evidence
wow.
providence fund of the
That's
workers,
disgusting. That's
the working
horrible.
class, right? Can you imagine how sick
Horrible.
is that? It's horrible. So yeah, and then a lot of repression to the trade union and all that. It's also happening. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're
I'm
not
just
rambling at
like
all.
still,
No,
you
we
know.
really feel the passion, Rina. There's really a lot of that, you know, emotions, because death is really, it hits everyone in the gut. No, it really affects everything in terms of governments being unable to provide for those social services, health, education, housing, etc. So we totally understand why everyone is so passionate about discussing the debt issue. But I have a question. You mentioned that in this convenings, the call was for is for debt cancellation. No, and I totally understand also that there's a need to cancel the debt. But coming from a movement perspective, don't you have you discussed about, calling for repudiation of debt instead of, because when you say cancellation, it still gives the power to the banks. It still gives the power to those who lent the money. Please cancel our debt, no? But when you say we are repudiating this debt, it's coming from the point of view of people and governments who are saying, no, we do not recognize these are illegitimate debts that have harmed people and planet. So we are not recognizing, we don't owe, we won't pay.
Yeah,
Has
so
there been a kind
exactly,
of discussion
exactly
like that?
that was the discussion that happened exactly like that, right? And then but of course that we know there's a lot of strategy. Okay, our messaging is clear. We don't owe, we won't pay, we are the creditors, right? And then that is our messaging, and that's what we want, and then that's how we want to see it. But of course that we also want to be part also on the movements, and then also try to see whatever that we can do, to actually have this, like one of the campaign on the debt cancellation, I think is quite big already. And then we also say that, okay, we're going to support in any way, but actually our vision is that, right? We don't owe, we won't pay, we are the creditors. So yeah, so that is what we have now. How, not why, because we know why. No, how we're going to do that, that is something that we will need to discuss a little bit more. But there's a lot of strategy. Is mostly, it's also talking about how we documenting evidences that is real, that is grounded, that is not only statistic, that is not only data, but also of course that data are important. And then again, there are like some requests coming from our secretary, Sri Lanka partners and members, saying that let's gather all the feminists left, and then we're going to let's gather all the left feminists, and then we're going to actually discuss about this issue, and then also make unpack these terms, that we don't understand sometimes, and then make it more chewable for our political education. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like roughly the issue right now. Yeah, so
I
that's
guess
my
that's amazing. And just wanted to say that we will have the annuals of the IMF and the World Bank in October in Marrakesh. And this is going to be a big moment precisely for the debt movement, the austerity movement, workers movement, etc. There are many mobilizations that are getting ready to get there and to really organize rallies and calling out the World Bank and the IMF for the situation they are imposing in the people around the world. So I think that's going to be a big moment to follow up. Our colleagues are also organizing a global week of action for debt, climate, and economic justice. And so we are preparing many events, also sessions in trying to address, sorry, the linkages between the impact of women and how you can have a feminist lens into the analysis and the actions in the issue of debt, austerity, conditionalities, coloniality, imperialism, etc. So I think that's going to be a big moment. And given that it's happening in the global south and in the MENA region and in the African continent, many mobilizations are happening also from that end. And from the international community, we are also preparing to stand in solidarity to support the demands and the realities to be portrayed at the forefront of our conversations. So that's going to be also really important. I don't know if any of you is going to go to Marrakesh. I'm going to be there. We are part of the End Austerity campaign, and we're going to organize as well the End Austerity Campaign Festival. So it's going to be one day before the annuals, but we are aligned with all of the other organizing, like the rally, so many things. This global week of action for that. So many things are going to be happening, and we are seeing this together in a joint pathway towards COP28.
Yeah, that's exciting. And then also, like our allies, yeah, Asia Pacific Movement on, what is Asia People's Movement on Death and Development, APMDD, was also there.
APMDD. Yes.
Yes, APMDD during the regional convening and then also the national convening. So yeah, we are also going to be part of that, global
Fantastic.
day of action. And then yeah, so that is yeah, we also need actually a lot of solidarity and then mobilize as many as we can.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I will not be able to go there. How about you, Tet? Will you be able to go?
No, but I will be in another big moment. I will be in New York for the big climate march to end fossil fuels. Now, it's also a global day of action, and it coincides with all of these UN SDG summit, SDG whatever, whatever. So, which we don't have any access to. So, I'm saying it's whatever, whatever, because we don't know what the leaders will say. No, it's just them. Its security is so tight, it's so restrictive. But I will be out in the street, not demanding an end to fossil fuels.
That's
So,
Yay.
but Emilia, you said you had one gossip when we started this broadcast. So, what's that gossip? Come on, come on, come on. Because you've
Um,
also been attending some feminist gatherings. No, I put it in quotation because I heard you speak about that already in another meeting. But maybe to share with our friends, what is this gossipy thing that you have for us?
what is
I don't know
that?
if I should. Well, okay. First of all, I have three things to say. I'm going to start with the most important so that we have the time to properly discuss this. One is that our colleagues from Diva for Equality in the Pacific are calling for solidarity. They're organizing a full session tomorrow. But given that the Spice Girls are meeting today, I'm going to talk about this today because we are standing in solidarity with them. Because I don't know if you've heard all this year, the Pacific community has been strongly fighting Japan. And this hasn't had the support from the international community that should have. Japan is trying to release 1.3 million tons of treated nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. And they're trying to do that this weekend or next week. So the Pacific community has been standing up and confront Japan in all of the spaces possible. And even some countries have confronted Japan when Japan shows up. So, for instance, also in my case, I'm part of the steering committee of the C7, which is the civil society monitoring the G7 activities. And this year, the presidency was held by Japan. So we were in Tokyo at the beginning of the year. And of course, I brought up this issue in the closing plenary with the Japanese representative because we need to confront them in public. They keep on saying, "No, we are up to the technical standards, whatever," but we all know that the impacts that this has is gonna roll up to generations and it's gonna impact everything, the lives in the oceans, food systems, everything, the health, everything. And there are many groups in civil society organizing, for instance, the Japan Mothers Group. They're also standing in solidarity, and many Japanese groups, because they experience firsthand the impacts of nuclear energy and how that can really unfold into very negative effects for generations. So they are saying, since the ocean has no walls, what's been released can't be taken back. So this issue is not only for Fukushima or Japan, but for the whole world. And this is exactly what is going to happen to the Pacific, right? So also other people in the Pacific are saying 80% of the protein source for Pacific people come from fish and other seafood. So throwing all of this waste into the ocean is playing with fire. And so Japan is adding in burdens for intergenerational burdens for the entire region. And the science is saying, no, you cannot say this. No matter what you say, there is no safe dose of radiation. So I think it's just really important to say how the entire Pacific is standing up. They're gonna have rallies tomorrow all day long in different regions, in different countries, in different villages. And also tomorrow, many protests are gonna happen in Japan for the people who's trying to push their governments. So for the audience, I want to say, if you can organize something tomorrow, a tweetathon, a rally, contact the Japan mission embassy, whatever, do so. Show up, put some signs outside, just join the hashtags. There are many hashtags. Let me tell you, it's hashtag Pacific Ocean, and tag Diva for Equality, which is at Diva number 4 equality. And you can join so many activities also at Can Pacific IS, and so many organizations are joining into these actions. I think it's very important because it's part of this larger discussion that we're saying, when we want an energy transition, what do we want? And people, what we kept on hearing that nuclear energy is safe, but it's not safe. And humans are fallible. Science, and the science says no, but nuclear is safe because it's gonna keep on happening in the same way, because physics are not fallible, but humans are, and these are our responsibilities. So this is one of the reasons why we strongly reject nuclear energy. But again, in this case, this is one of the consequences of those irresponsible actions by governments, and now they're impacting the ones that the least deserve it, because they're receiving all of the impacts from the environment crisis. So we really need to stand in solidarity with them. This is a plea for all of you to stand in solidarity with the Pacific movement. This is an alliance of many feminists, LGBTI, environmentalists, etc. So I think it's really important that we are aware that tomorrow it's a big day for mobilization.
Yeah. Yeah, also just to let you know, I completely agree. If we can, they also give a lot of media advisory ways to actually support. We can also share it later on. What is important also, like that's also the same message that some of our Pacific participants that coming to this militarism convening, because we are doing a militarism convening right now, they're also called the same. And then we're going to have a solidarity action with 50 Asia and the Pacific women to say no to this. Yeah, so it's very, very important.
We should denounce Japan, no? It's like
Exactly.
this again are the rich countries just doing whatever they want because it's convenient for them. Never mind what the impacts would be on the neighboring islands, on neighboring countries and communities. It's like no amount of radioactive waste is safe, you know?
Exactly.
It's threatening biodiversity, it's threatening, you know, precious and the very, very vulnerable ecosystem. So we should all stand up with in solidarity with our Pacific brothers and sisters, but also to strongly denounce Japan. No, let's not them get away with it.
Totally. Yeah. And so I don't have much time for the gossip, but just let me say, I'm gonna have to say the general thing. I attended the Women Deliver meeting in Rwanda, and Women Deliver, it's an interesting beast. They say they are a feminist organization when they are with feminist organization, and but they say that they're a private sector entity when they are with the corporate space. So, and the head of Women Deliver, she says, I am a CEO. So they're private sector. But when they come with us, they say we are civil society. So that's, first of all, let's clarify that they're private entity and they're promoting this meeting. So this meeting is also really important for many reasons for the feminist movement. And I just want to be candid about it. Women Deliver is one of the few corporate spaces that is in open support of sexual and reproductive health and rights. So, in the same way the right wing is always supporting the most horrible policies on contraceptives, on comprehensive sexuality education, etc., and they have a lot of money, Women Deliver is making an effort into setting a space for the feminists on the sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights into having access to power. So I think that is very, very important that we recognize that. So this is a space in which governments, which means decision making and political power, as well as other corporate entities, come together and realize the importance of SRHR. So, in that sense, Women Deliver has been doing a great job so far in convening power with feminist SRHR activists. And so I think it has been working in the past. The thing is, they're total disconnect with the bigger fights, with the structural issues, with the economic issues that in the end are bringing women into this precarity of access to their rights that is not only related to SRHR, and that may be a consequence of a bigger system in which also the corporations have a lot of responsibility in the situation women are in. So that in the past, Women Deliver got involved into a public scandal. Everybody knows that. So that's not the gossip I wanted to talk about. Everybody knows that during the pandemic, there were denounces of racial abuse, labor abuse, and a lot of things that were really very horrible in terms of a space that supposedly was catering for a feminist agenda. So the former CEO was she left, she stepped down, and and a process started to renew Women Deliver, including an advisory group of real feminists, like hardcore feminists, to advise on how to reconfigure. Just on the sidelines, I want to say that for many years, many feminist organizations have boycotted Women Deliver meetings, including APWLD right here. so, and there is this discussion every time a Women Deliver conference happens: are we gonna go or are we gonna join the boycott? But it's also a space to hold ground, and this is why I was invited as a speaker. I didn't have to pay because it's super expensive. So this is another thing, like, how can you call yourself a feminist space if it's so expensive? And of course, feminist activists don't have the funding to attend. So I went because I got invited. They paid for my expenses. And I said exactly the same thing, that we are there to hold the ground on behalf of real feminist movement because it is a contended space. We do not recognize it as a feminist movement space. And the proof was that on the first day, the president of Senegal showed up. He spoke in French. Nobody had access to the interpretation, but he said in the opening words that there had to be a balance between tradition and gender equality. And I was like, no, he cannot come here and say that. And then the president of Hungary, who's a woman, she said, oh, I'm the first president woman in my country. And everybody was like, yeah, because those, it's also this white feminism that is really pushing forward the issue of inclusion and participation without nothing else. And so everybody was cheering for her. And then she says that her main gender equality agenda was to promote the ability of women to have more babies, more children. And so again, this was just horrible. And so there have been many reactions from that, and Women Deliver said, no, but we do not abide by those ideas. But we want to say that we are always welcoming a dialogue, because how can we agree if we don't sit down and talk? So it's very important to have a dialogue. So free speech, whatever. And for me, it's like that's a proof that it's not a feminist space, because we don't debate women's human rights. We take them for granted. And so you cannot say that, oh, I'm a feminist, and then I'm bringing the most horrible right wing into the table to the opening plenary. And well, yes, I'm just gonna say this because I like saying this. Fumsile is an embarrassment. She came in and said, "Oh yeah, there is a special place in hell for women who don't help women." It's like, what? You were the former ED of UN Women, and now you're blaming on women the situation that women are facing. Like, as if you didn't know the structural challenges women are facing, and now you're sending them to hell. No, we need to send to hell the IMF, the World Bank, the corporations, the militaristic, like, horrible, just horrible. And for the next 3 days, all of the white women were saying, "Oh, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women." It's like, and everybody was cheering. So it's like, it was horrible. So it was a very hostile space, and it was very difficult. Just want to say that I know many of our real feminists are doing the fight internally. So we have colleagues like um, internally who organized, for instance, a session on climate change and feminism. And it was a very fierce space. It was really useful. And to expose other people to our views, I think it's really important, right? Grassroots people to tell their stories. But overall, it is a contended space. And I think it also has a lot of attendance because the AWID forum hasn't happened in a while. That is a real space in which we feel like a gathering space. And as Rina was saying, after COVID, we haven't had the opportunity to meet, just to. Rina was talking, we need to strategize, but we also need to be together and hug each other, and dance and party and reconfigure those bonds that are so important for social movements because everybody's enduring so much. So we are looking forward, Awid, for your forum next year. I think there's still to announce the venue. Let me take some bit of time to tell you about the gossip because it's a very important gossip. So I don't know if I should be talking about this, but it's out there. It's out there.
You see, both of us are moving closer to the camera so we can hear you better.
So this year, at the beginning of the year, the Secretary General instructed that there should be an evaluation on how the gender equality policy is being held at the UN. So he hired a consultant firm, not a feminist, not an expert feminist consultant, a firm to do this evaluation, not only on UN Women's job, like how are you promoting gender equality, but for the status of gender equality across the UN system. So they perform interviews, whatever, evaluation, they read papers, whatever, and they came out with a report that it's a secret report, that it's an internal report that is for internal circulation only. And of course, everybody has had access to that secret report. So we've all read it. And it paints UN women and the police and the UN itself in a very bad light, super ugly light. It says basically that the UN has not made significant advancements because they have no structural approach, because they have no understanding, no common understanding of what gender equality is, that gender equality is seen only as the minimum, and they have only been promoting inclusion. So all of the other structural obstacles and the real sources of inequality, that has not been addressed at all by the UN system at all. And so this also paints in a very bad light to UN Women because they are the leading agency on this agenda. So what the report is showing is that in general, UN agencies don't know what gender equality is. They don't think it is their mandate. So they don't exercise a real mandate on gender equality when they say gender mainstreaming is only about inclusion, bringing women, add women and stir. And their understanding, their intellectual understanding is that of inclusion, which is just ridiculous. ridiculous. And we've heard UN women insisting, oh, women need to be at the table or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but what about all of the structural issues? Like, really, in such a conservative backlash, discursive and actionable backlash, UN women has been on that side. I'm not saying everybody, I want to be nuanced about the same way I talk about women deliver. We need to take things historically and in context. And we know there are real feminists inside UN women. But we also know that the leadership has taken UN women into this direction. So this report is coming out for the Secretary General and Amina Mohammed to say that state is disgraceful. So what are we going to do? So they're saying whatever, UN women needs to get stronger, whatever. But we know what is the real meaning of that report. And we know also that that report is coming why it hasn't been released officially by the Secretary General, because it will do a lot of harm from UN women. On the other side, from us as feminists who have been fighting against this new trend in UN women, new for a couple of years, for some years, even with Fumsile there, it's a question: are we going to support UN women? Like, I don't want to be horrible. I know I am being horrible. We need to defend a space that is there to promote gender equality and women's human rights. But they themselves have backed down in supporting women's human rights. They keep on saying, oh, women's empowerment. And so now the report is there and is saying what we've been saying all this time. The role of the UN agencies in the gender equality agenda has been underperforming, has been in the lower and least common denominator, and so we need to do something about it. So there's a big scandal inside the UN in discussing what is happening about this. From the feminist point of view in the movement, we haven't sat down to discuss this report, but this is the gossip. The company who did the report showed up in Women Deliver, and it was like, let's have a session. And so they discussed the methodology and report, and I was like, I thought this was a secret report. And so they sat down and they asked the audience, does anybody here know the report? How many of you have read it? And all of us were like, I have read the report. It was like 30 feminist organizations there, plus some agencies, plus some donors. So yeah, I just want to say, it's not my mandate to keep it secret if it's out there, if it was in Women Deliver. So, but it's a big gossip. It is big. We need to talk about it. It has major implications for us as feminists, because this is the question that Rina was asking, right? Like, are we gonna keep on hoping on the UN? That's the only multilateral space we have that is democratic, transparent, whatever. So we are there, but we know that they're underperforming. We know where their alliances are. We know that they're blocking access to stakeholders, observers, as Teta was saying at the beginning. So are we going to support them in these dire times of crisis? So it's like, I think we have also a lot of leverage to discuss with UN Women now, because Sima, the executive director, has not met in 2 years, a year and a half, with the feminist movement since she arrived. They say, oh, but she has met with grassroots organizations. It's like, yeah, but the feminist movement engaged in international processes. We are also in the streets, and we are here as well, and you have not met with us. So don't get your situation wrong in thinking, oh, because you are elite and you are not doing really anything with the movement, so we don't meet with you because we really despise elites. It's like, no, it's actually the opposite. We are moving global agendas, and there's also a hidden interest on your end because you have not met with us. So just want to point that out very clearly. And so that's the gossip. I opened it up for your reactions before closing.
Actually, I have heard about the gossip like about few months ago. Yeah, and then the question whether that we're going to support UN women or not, yes, we can have a conversation with that. But like, yeah, we're not going to support unless you do what we want you to do. No.
Exactly.
So
I smell overhaul, the opportunity,
Oh,
I just don't know if I should have told this live, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I think this is why people need to keep on watching the Despise Girls, because we are really in the know, we are really inside, and all of these tensions of power are also happening internally. I know the precarity of funding that UN Women is at, but so are we as movement. UN Women is always competing for funding with the feminist movement, and sometimes their budgetary allocation is also not for the best. They're lowering down all of the ambitions. They're turning us down in our messages. So many things are there, and as Tete was saying, like, we will need to sit down then and see what happens, no? And as Rina was saying, are we going to support if they sit down with us and if they are willing to listen? And the report is quite clear. It's a substantive discussion. It's not a political discussion either. It's a substantive discussion. If you don't even know what gender equality means, if you just promote inclusion with all of that money, with all of that presence, with all of that legitimacy, if you're only supporting inclusion, it's like, where have you been in this world with all of these multi-layer crises that are posing humanity and the planet into a huge risk? So yeah, more on the next episodes.
oh my God. I'm so looking forward
That's
for
a
the next episode.
lot. No, we managed to cover
It is.
so many topics.
It is.
And there's going to
But
be more because September hasn't started yet.
yeah.
Maybe we should have another episode next week to tell people what to expect in September. Well, for the Philippines, September is when we start hearing Christmas songs on the radio.
Already, yeah, already.
No, we in Mexico need to have day of bread for the Day of the Dead before Christmas songs, but we're gonna get there soon.
So I
Oh,
guess we'll have another one next week. Come on. We're just getting started.
We can try. I'm gonna go to the Asia meeting on debt and the African meeting on debt and development next week. It's gonna happen in Dakar, Senegal. So I hope it's gonna be. I was really inspired reading about what you told us, and I think it's gonna be pretty much similar to hearing from people from the movements to discuss and very strongly to deal with a more radical approach, as Peter was also mentioning, from the movement. So that's gonna be really inspiring. So next week I'm gonna be in Senegal, but we can definitely see if we can have the session next week or in 2 weeks, so that we can really be present in September, because many things are going to happen. So yeah, thank you both, and very exciting when the three of us meet. So thanks to our audience. Share and keep on tagging
Maybe
us
thank
we
in
can
your
you.
social media.
also motivate our friends. Let's do the UN dance again in September.
Yeah.
We have to bring it back. There's so many quotable quotes, no? It's the
So,
era of global boiling.
oh gosh.
We'll bring back our dance.
Yeah. So everyone, and then so we don't know yet whether it's next week or the other, what do you call it? The other
Yeah.
week. So keep, yeah, just like in
Yeah.
tune with us. Yeah,
Yep.
everybody.
Okay. Sending you
Thank you so
kisses.
much, everyone.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye.